We are already at part 9, and I think this tutorial is actually slowly but surely coming to a close. But there are still a few things that I want to talk about before we can call this one done. And the one that we're going to talk about now is just some basic mixing. And when I say basic, I really do mean basic, because mixing in itself is a very nuanced and a complicated topic that requires a lot of experience and expertise, and for good reason is an entirely different career path, that of the mixing engineer. But I still want to give you a very basic workflow that you will be able to follow along and that will still make your songs sound more balanced and more enjoyable to listen to. We are going to start this one off with a concept in mixing that is called gain staging. And gain staging basically means adjusting the volume levels of each of our tracks so they are all about the same for each track that we have. And for my own purposes, some of you might have noticed this, but on my effect chain, I have made this gain staging effect here. It's called here gain staging. So let me explain to you what exactly it does. So basically I have one effect, the utility, that allows me to change the volume or the gain of the audio signal that comes from my instrument. And then I have a compressor that doesn't do anything. So there's no changing in the audio signal that happens here. But all I'm using it for is to give me these handy little graphics that I have here. Because the graphics, once I play this, the graphics that will show up here, they show me the volume of the signal. So let me show you what I mean. So if I just play the melody, I have a little graphic of the overall volume of my signal. Okay. So what I want to do next is I want to set a threshold, which is here by minus 18 dB. And it is represented by this line here. And when I listen back to my melody, I want to dial in this gain knob so that my input signal at its loudest, at its maximum volume, is around the height of this line. So probably somewhere around here. And you can see it on top here. If I crank it up really high, you can see how this line changes. This would be if the compressor would work, but I have turned it off. This would mean a gain reduction. So I want to be at a level where this line above is only minimally changing. Maybe just like this. This sounds quite nice. And once you've done this, you can be sure that at the loudest, your melody line will be around minus 18 decibels. And knowing that all of our instruments will be equally loud will be very helpful to us once we actually dial in the levels of our final song. And by the way, if you follow along on a different software, don't worry, just look up the term gain staging, as it is written here, gain staging. And you will probably like gain staging and then your particular software, and you will probably find a way how to do it pretty easily. So yeah, I'll go ahead and do this for all of my instruments, and I will see you then. Okay, I have now done it for all of the other instruments. And one more thing that I forgot to mention that I think is very important is that for more percussive sounds, like the ones in a drum set, for example, that have a very sharp increase in volume, it will very quickly reach above this line. But it is important to know that that is just the peak level. So the average of the signal, a very percussive sound has a very sharp peak, but the average of the signal can still be very low. So it is important for gain staging that you find a way to measure the average of your loudness. And this is done here by if you set the compressor to RMS and not to the peak level. So if I play if I play the drums, you can see that I have the RMS, but if I would do the peak level, you can see that these reductions are way more sharp, way more aggressive. So I want to do the RMS because this really gives me the idea of what the actual average of the sound volume is. Okay. Okay, once you're done with gain staging all of your different instruments, what you want to do next is simply select all of them and turn them all down to 0, so that you don't hear anything once you play the song. So all of them are basically turned off. Then you will find a very important or just a very significant component of your song. So for us, for example, the chords, but these could also be the bass or the drums or the melody, probably something, maybe stick to the chords for now, and you turn them up to -5 here on the output level. And -5 because we do want to have some room upwards and we do want to have some room downwards when we dial in the levels. And then you'll find the next most important component. So for example, our bass or the melody, well, however you choose. And then I want you to listen back to the section, find a loop of the sections. For example, this one here or this one. Choose one where the melody, where the parts are very prominent. So I might choose this one because the bass here has a little bit more action. And now you just put this on loop, listen to it. And what I want you to do now is basically you close your eyes and just adjust this level. Slowly but surely, you adjust it upwards. And periodically, I do it with my keyboard with the up and down arrow keys. And slowly, and each step of the way, like periodically make a decision. Does it need to be louder? Does it need to be quieter? And then you simply go through each one of them in succession, always making the decision, does it need to be louder? Does it need to be quieter? Until you feel like you don't need to make any changes anymore. One more thing that can also be very beneficial when mixing, especially if you don't know how to do it yet or have not much experience, is to find a reference, a track that you enjoy that maybe sounds similar to yours, and then listen back to it and get a feeling of how loud is the bass, how loud are the drums, how loud are the chords and whatever. So that can really help you a lot if you find just a reference track that you can switch back and forth between while you're mixing your own stuff. Now I will just do the things that I have been talking about. I will just close my eyes and I will slowly increase the volumes of each of these components until I basically like what I hear. So I try to be quick with this one. So let's start. Okay, closing my eyes and just increasing it slowly. Now we can begin to hear it. It needs to be louder for me. Maybe a bit quieter even. Okay, I think right here is good. Next might be the drums that I would like to introduce. So I'm closing my eyes again. Okay, here they are. Definitely louder. Louder. Maybe a bit louder. Bit quieter. Maybe louder. Yeah, let's keep it like this. It will probably change. But yeah, now the melody. definitely louder. I like it around here, so maybe just some small adjustments. Okay. Okay, now let's listen for the vibraphone. Here it comes. Needs to be somewhere around here. Sounds good. Maybe a little bit louder. I think this sounds quite good. Okay, so this is basically the process. So yeah, you might, after you've done this, you might want to give yourself a little break and come back to this afterwards, or you might even want to listen to it on different speakers or different headphones just for reference. Yeah, okay, but I think this is probably the step. This gain staging, this dialing the volumes, is probably the step that will give you the most drastic results in the shortest amount of time when it comes to making your music sound balanced. Yeah. And it's one that you should always do right at the beginning. Before thinking about anything else, gain staging is the most important step for making a song sound nice and balanced. So if you still find that there are some frequencies after you have done the gain staging and adjusting the volume, what you can do is, I would suggest you can do an EQing or equalizer, and you can put it on actually the main channel. So the channel where all of our instruments are routed to. And you know, EQing is a bit of a difficult topic because it requires some ear training to know exactly what you're doing. But just in case that there are some frequencies that you still do not enjoy, or some parts in the music that are maybe too loud and too overpowering to the rest, I would suggest, just for the intents and purposes of this video, just try to focus on one EQ that goes directly on the main channel, and try to simply reduce some of these frequencies. Don't boost anything, I would say, but for now, just reduce stuff. So for example, usually what can happen is a lot of the low end can be a bit too rumbly, so you might want to cut some of the low end out. There's also sometimes around this area, around the 100 to 200 hertz, can be a lot of frequencies that build up throughout the song. So for example, the bass has some frequencies in this area, the chords have some frequencies, the drums have some frequencies. You might want to lower them down as well, or you might want to decrease some of the high end because it sounds too sharp. But all in all, I think for arrangement this minimal, you should be able to get a very good mix simply by dialing in all of the output levels. But, you know, just in case you want to be a little bit more nuanced, don't bother yourself with putting an EQ on each of these channels, but just go and try to make it sound good on the master channel alone. Another thing that you can do that will usually make a very big difference in sound is sending your tracks to a reverb. And in Ableton, this is done by this dial here. So this is a send, and this basically sends the audio signal of the melody to another track, which is down here, which is the reverb. And this should function exactly the same in your software as well. And if you struggle to find how to do it, just Google send and return tracks for your particular software. And with the reverb, I want you to simply focus on the decay for now, because a longer reverb gives the impression of a bigger room, something more spacious, and a shorter decay gives the feeling of something more intimate. So I think for us, something more intimate for this particular track would be very fitting, but let me show you how both of them sound. So if I just solo the melody and I just dial in this knob and send more of my audio signal to the reverb, you can hear this little shimmer in the sustain in the background. And if I turn the decay up, you can really hear it. But this is a bit too much. So for me, I would prefer something a little bit smaller, a little bit more intimate. But yeah, don't overdo it with the reverb. There are some sounds that can benefit quite a lot from reverb, and it's the thinner sounds, like for example the melody. It makes it a little bit more full. But the lower sounds, they usually, I wouldn't go too hard on the reverb for the bass, for example, because usually they don't need it. And if there's a lot of bass reverb, everything can sound quite muddy really quickly. So it might be the case that your bass doesn't need any reverb at all. Because if you dial it up and you cannot hear any difference, then leave it off. Don't make a change that you cannot hear, okay? And the drums as well. The drums, they might not need a lot of reverb because they can also sound very different, but they might benefit from just a little bit. So just gives them a little bit more room, more sustain. But if I turn them up quite high, it sounds weird, So maybe just go with something a little bit more subtle. The vibraphone could really benefit from some reverb just to make it a little bit fuller. But listen to it in context. I solo it here, but don't do it. Just listen to the entire track and try to dial in the reverb. So if I listen to this, I think it's too much reverb on the melody. But yeah, use your ears again to dial this in. Always listen in context. And again, if you cannot hear any difference, don't make any changes. It usually does more harm than good if you turn some knobs that you don't know what they do. Okay, yeah, I think that is it. That is all I have to say. And by the way, you can do all of these steps while you're composing as well. So for example, I dial in some reverb because it usually sounds nicer, and I do the gain staging before I add a new instrument, just because it makes everything sound, already sound a little bit more like I want it to sound. But I think the important point is that I don't spend much time on it while I'm composing. I don't analyze it as much as I do in this phase. So it's just a very quick, I adjust the levels so that it is about there where I want it, but I move on very quickly, just a few seconds, and then I move on. And at the mixing stage is where I really get quite analytical. Okay, there are still some more things that I can talk about. There's still compression, for example, or delay. But I would suggest, if you're interested in some more detailed stuff about mixing, I would suggest you check these things out for yourself. There's tons of content on YouTube for that matter. So, but there's a lot of practice and expertise involved with mixing. And my goal is to stick to some tips that are, I guess, most easy to implement for you, that for beginners, and that will still give you some good to very good results nonetheless. Yeah. And one more thing, by the way, you see that I have reduced a lot of these down. So I have -5 here at my maximum. So what you can do to regain some of the loss in loudness is just simply put one of these utility plugins that we have for the gain staging as well, and simply raise it up to the level that you would like it to be. Okay. Yeah, so that is really it for now. I think this series is slowly coming to an end. And yeah, it's about time to wrap up pretty soon. I probably have some more things to talk about, but yeah, let's see how it goes. We'll see you in the next one, I hope, and bye-bye.